Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday morning for me. I'm out on the West Coast. I'm joined by Chris. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to cover all 15 slates in the next 58 minutes, or all 15 games, I should say, that make up multiple slates. We've got a 6-game early slate. We've got a mid-afternoon slate. We've got an afternoon slate with 3 games. Then we've got a full main slate. We are brought to you here by PrizePicks. We're going to talk about them. Key thing you want to know about PrizePicks, sign up using the promo code Awesemo, get a $100 up to $100 deposit match. Those funds come out of your account first, especially when you use that promo code Awesemo. You'll also get yourself 30 free days of Awesemo premium content by using our promo code. That is $190 value just to use the word Awesemo. Seems like a pretty good deal. Chris, this is our first show together. Welcome to the fun. Welcome to the insanity that is an EMAC show.
Looking forward to it. I've heard a lot about you, so I'm excited to be part of it for sure.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely have some fun here. Baseball, always my favorite sport. It was my first foray into real fantasy sports way back once upon a time. That would be spring of 1990. A long time ago, we used to track our statistics through rotisserie format, and you would make moves once a week. And we tracked them in Excel because one person would sit there and read the newspaper to someone typing into Excel. It was well before the internet existed. Lots of fun there. But glad we have all the tools we have here at Awesemo. Of course, you've also got FanGraphs, ESPN, StatCast, all the other great stuff there. But when you look at Awesemo, we're consolidating all of that important information for you into one spot. So you can get all those great Awesemo tools and content for every sport out there. You can get an Awesemo weekly pass that gives you everything for $29.95. You can also get the Baseball Express package for as low as $4.95 a week. That one is probably our best of all the Express packages because what it does is you get the ownership rankings, the player rankings, and that is all you really need for baseball. Everything is event-based, boom or bust. The median projections, does it matter if somebody's a half a point projected higher than another batter? Probably not. But once you know where the field's going to be and how you can leverage against it, that's a perfectly helpful package for you guys to jump on in and have some fun. Speaking of jumping on in and having some fun, we're going to start off here with our first game. We've got the Arizona Diamondbacks at the New York Mets. Zach Gallen making his first start of the season. Got Carlos Carrasco going against him. Carrasco, kind of hit or miss, lucked into his last game, didn't allow too many base runners, if I'm reading my notes correctly, but he is someone that is no longer the dominant pitcher that he was back in his Cleveland days. So what would you like to do with our first game here taking place in Citi Field?
Yeah, we can start with Zach Gallen first. I feel like he's a bit expensive at $9,300. He's a good pitcher, don't get me wrong, and I've always been a fan in his short career so far. And does have a decent strikeout rate. If you're dating back to last season, over 26% last year. The one thing he can struggle with is walks. That was close to 10% last season, but over 10 Ks per 9, which we're always hunting strikeouts when it comes to MLB DFS. So I think that's fine. The matchup versus the Mets, I wouldn't say is amazing, but there are some guys that I believe that get hit with the few guys on the COVID list yesterday. So I'm not sure how long they're going to be out, but I do know they're going to be out today. His original start got pushed back due to a cut on his thumb, but I don't think it's going to be a huge issue here. In spring training, he went 6.1 innings, went 36 pitches in his first spring training start. I didn't see how deep he got into his final start, but only 6.1 innings isn't a huge sample size. So I'm not sure how deep he's going to go. And at above $9,000, it feels a bit much in my opinion. I think we have some better value pitchers on this slate to get to.
With us having 15 games here, we are not going to dilly-dally where there are not a lot of things to talk about. But to your point, one of the New York Mets coaches did test positive for COVID-19. That made Brandon Nimmo and Mark Conha end up on the COVID in the health and safety protocol. The manager did not identify which coach did test positive, but we'll want to make note of this because there are different rules within baseball this season for those who are who have been vaccinated and those who have not. So close contact does come into play usually for those that have not been vaccinated. Moving on to our next game here. We've got, I sorted these slightly different, so let me go back to the run sheet to make sure I get it in the right order. Tampa Bay at the White Sox here, you've got Corey Kluber making his second start. Looked pretty solid in that first start. We know that one risk that Tampa Bay, with any Tampa Bay pitcher, is they're not afraid to pull their guys once they complete the second time through the order, even if they're running very economically. Kluber has been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, but he does still have that strikeout stuff, which makes him a viable pitcher. Tough matchup for him going against the White Sox that have a bit of a juggernaut offense. You've got Michael Kopech on the other side. He dealt with a bout of COVID-19 during the first portion of spring training, so he is not quite up to the full workload stamina as expected. A few people were sleeping at the switch when they were looking at him in his first game. He probably will go a little deeper this game, but just know it'll be a shock if he goes beyond 5 innings. What do you like from our hurlers here? It looks like this could be our discount dandies for those second pitchers on Yahoo as well as DraftKings.
Yeah, I'm definitely pretty interested in this game as far as the pitchers go, more so Michael Kopech, just because I like this price point quite a bit. And while Tampa does have plenty of power, they will strike out a little bit. They did lose Austin Meadows, which is definitely a hit for them as far as the power department goes, but I'll chase a little bit of the strikeout upside. I know it's kind of a limited sample for Kopech. We're talking 70-some innings last year, and not a fully stretched out pitch or anything, but a 35% K. Like, we know he's got good stuff. 3.15 xFIP. I like him quite a bit. I'm looking at the Awesemo top pitchers tool. Looks like he's going to be the highest owned pitcher on the early slate. Also has the best chance to be a top 2 pitcher, and the projections of him, best chance to be the top value pitcher. So I can definitely get behind that. I would say the pitching options on this slate are that great anyway. So I think at this price point, a lot of people are going to get there, and I can certainly get behind it. Corey Kluber, not as interested, but I do like that he went pretty deep into the game, which is usually not something we see from a Tampa Bay pitcher.
All right. I see we have some fans in chat already wondering why we're not going to break down all the pitchers. Well, we're doing 15 games inside of an hour, so we're going to hit on the high notes. If we don't like a pitcher, we'll definitely hit on some of the key batters for those standpoints. But remember, this is where you get to use all of the great Awesemo tools here, because we're sitting with some free tools. We'll talk about those in just a minute. I am so sorry, we're working on the sound quality here. I will just have talk louder and more animated to make this work, which, hey, that works for me as well. No problem there. So is there any hitter that does stand out in this game, other than I believe you can fully roll the dice with a Chicago stack here? If we're going to assume Kluber is probably going to go for about 70 pitches today, and that could get him through the order twice. I think looking at a contrarian or a secondary stack here of the White Sox is a savvy strategy here. We want to remember that Tampa Bay does have a pretty good bullpen as well.
Yeah, I can get behind the White Sox just because, it's not the greatest matchup for Kluber and then the bullpen from Tampa, but there's a lot of good offensive pieces in this lineup too that you have to keep in mind, like Tim Anderson at the top, Luis Robert, Jose Abreu, Manny Grandal, Eloy Jimenez. While it's a tough matchup, it's also a tough matchup for the pitcher as well. And the 4.5 implied team total is not terrible, even though the matchup is pretty rough.
All right, let's have some fun here. We've got the Oakland Athletics at the Toronto Blue Jays here. Paul Blackburn somehow fell into some strikeouts in his last start. Don't think that is going to be something that happens frequently. We can almost say the same thing for Hyun-Jin Ryu. Ryu has been pitching to contact quite a bit over the last couple seasons, turned into a bit of a gas can on the mound. He still does have his moments. However, the brand name seems to still be carrying a lot more weight than what his actual results have been. To me, this feels like a game where we can look to the hitters. I would suspect, depending on the weather in Toronto, they'll probably have the roof closed today. It's looking like it's going to be in the upper 40s to the lower 50s today, so it wouldn't shock me if the roof is closed there. Any thought to either of these pitchers, or is this the first place we can really dig our heels into some hitters?
I mean, it should be no surprise here, but I'm certainly on the Toronto Blue Jays bats. So for me, Paul Blackburn is just not an option. He just doesn't have any strikeout upside. If you're dating back to the 2021 numbers, 17% K rate, doesn't really walk too many guys. So he's going to give you pitches to hit. Also gives up quite a bit of pop around a 200 ISO. And I don't think I have to tell you guys that the Blue Jays have a good lineup, but they certainly do. They have Vlad and tons of power upside from top to bottom. They are going to be without Teoscar Hernandez, but you can just completely stack up this lineup. I have no problem with that. As far as Ryu goes, He's not my favorite DFS pitcher. He's definitely a lot better in real life, but only 20.5% K rate doesn't really walk too many guys. But just the way this pitching slate works out for the early slate, he's only $8,500. You're getting a discount from Galen, who I'm not sure is going to go too deep into the game. It looks like he's going to be pretty high owned. Looking at the Awesemo top pitchers tool here, he's got the second best chance to be a top 2 pitcher. And it's not Oakland's been kind of sneaky good so far to start the year. I thought heading to the season they were going to be terrible, but it looks like they're actually haven't been too bad so far. Plus, it's a hitter-friendly park in Toronto. But I do like
all sample size.
Right.
Come on, they traded everything that wasn't nailed down. It's going to catch up to them, right?
Right.
It has to. It can't be smoke and mirrors all season.
If you're just looking at the batting order, it's bad. There's a couple okay guys, but you can definitely use pitchers against them.
Yeah, Chad Pinder, when he is your day-to-day cleanup hitter against righties, that's a bit of a problem. I see like he's going to be up near batting leadoff today against lefties. Always phenomenal against lefties, but he is someone that historically has been a pinch hit risk when righties come into the game. So that was a shock to see him batting cleanup the first few days. Sean Murphy is a solid talent. But he can't do it all alone. Jed Lowry, forever pesky and penciled into that 3-hole. And then Elvis Andrus, who really should be relegated to an 8 or 9th spot in the lineup, batting second today. Feels a little terrifying here. I still don't like Ryu in this one for what Chris has mentioned and what I was hinting at before. But this would be a spot to take on the Oakland bats. They do still project for reasonable power, but it gets a little scary when Sheldon Noose, Christian Betancourt, et cetera, are here playing prominent roles here in the lineup. So that can be a little tricky as well. I do want to mention our free content today. We have the NBA ownership rankings. There's a 4-game slate as we are looking at game 1s for 4 different series starting today at 1:00. You also have the MLB player projections for the full slate available. You have the NHL top stacks tool is available for free today, as well as the MMA fighter rankings. We have a nice MMA card today as well. So you guys want to check that out. One way you can get in to Awesemo behind the paywall for free is to head over to the Awesemo podcast channel. You can get that link below us here on the YouTube video here. It'll just give us a 5-star review, leave your Twitter handle or your Awesemo name. And once a week, we are giving away 1 full month of Awesemo premium content via a random drawing for anybody that has put their name in with a 5-star review. Moving on to our remaining early games here. Atlanta at San Diego. Looks like it is going to be forever 67 degrees in San Diego. Seems like no matter what time of the day, it is chef's kiss perfect in San Diego. You've got Ian Anderson going against Nick Martinez here. Anderson, one of the talented members from Atlanta. He is someone that we'll want to keep our eye on. San Diego, of course, is without Fernando Tatis Jr., who is dealing with injuries. So their lineup takes a bit of a hit with him there. Nick Martinez, a little bit all over the place with his talent. Having him tangle with the Atlanta team doesn't seem like a savvy option. However, he is 6,700 on DraftKings. What do you like for this game? Are you leaning more towards the pitchers, or are any hitters sneaking in for you?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird game for me where I don't really love the pitchers, but also don't love the bats either. So it'd be just one I kind of stay away from. I think Nick Martinez is an interesting pivot option because if Michael Kopech is going to be by far the chalkiest pitcher, if he has any trouble whatsoever, I think Nick Martinez is maybe a decent pivot there. I know the matchup versus Atlanta isn't pretty, but they are a team that will strike out a little bit versus right-handed pitching. And Martinez was kind of surprising in his first start. He went 83 pitches versus San Francisco, struck out 6, which was kind of surprising to me versus San Francisco team that I thought was going to give him some trouble. I did have some San Francisco stacks in that first start, but I think at $6,700, he's a decent pivot. Ian Anderson, I do like as a talent. He goes 74 pitches in his first start, but he showed some pretty bad control, had 5 walks, gave up 5 runs, only lasted 2.2 innings versus Cincy. But I will say I've been using pretty much right-handed pitchers versus San Diego to start the season all season long so far, and it has worked out several times. I wouldn't hate getting to Anderson and maybe just a pivot off of that Ryu chalk up top.
All right, we've got 2 more games here on our 6-game early slate. This is also doubling as that mid morning / early afternoon slate as well. Enjoy these extended slates. These days, the sites are chopping them up in all sorts of different manners. Fortunately, we have all of the projections and information and tools that you need to be successful here. I see one of the questions asking, what type of stacks are we looking at today? I'm assuming this is DK 5-3, 4-3-1, 3-3-2s, etc. Generally, I will run 4 4s, 4 3s, and 5 0s on a slate of 6 or smaller and games, and I will vary my pitchers around some core stacks. That's how I approach this. I typically play just on DraftKings for baseball. I do dabble most weekends on Yahoo as well. It's a little bit different on Yahoo because you can go up to 6 hitters. I generally just do 1 stack on Yahoo and focus more on the one-offs there because you can find some cheaper bats that allow you to get in some of the better pitchers, and oftentimes they do have a little bit different pricing than the other sites do. So what seems like a good value on one site does not translate well to Yahoo. And sometimes you can find some diamonds in the rough there that are very, very helpful from the pitching side. I believe you play a fair amount over on FanDuel, Chris.
Yeah, I like DraftKings as far as like cash games go and single entries, but for FanDuel, I've been finding myself really enjoy the 150 max over there. Kind of boring. I run a lot of 4x4 stacks, which add my randomness and just kind of let it rip. I've been having fun with it. So it depends on the site and how I play pretty much.
Yeah. And for FanDuel, the key thing there is they weight a little bit more, their scoring is weighted a little heavier towards runs and walks and RBI as opposed to home runs, where DraftKings leans a little more towards home runs. So FanDuel, the 4-4 stack or the 4-3 stack is almost requisite for most any slate that has at least 4 games on that. And then one other question here, because this is a good one, and I know a lot of people are just tuning in for their first time on the weekend because, last weekend, opening weekend, caught a lot of people off guard, and we have a lot of working folks that do tend to come in and see what is up with the strategy show on the weekend. So this is from Brian. He says, do you run different crunches to get different stack sizes? And for me, the answer to that is yes. So what I will do is I use Fantasy Cruncher as my optimizer. I will set it for whichever team stacks I'm looking for of the 4-3, 5-0. Occasionally I'll run 5-2s, but mostly 4-4s and 5-0s on DraftKings. And then what I do is I will run my 5-0s, put that into a crunch. I will then run the next combination of stacks, put that into a crunch. So I do a fair amount of limiting and hard capping the different players to allow me to have a better spread across my player pool. So more often than not, on a full slate last night, I set every pitcher at 20% cap, and I set every batter at 17% because I wanted to be able to get a nice spread, and I don't use a lot of randomness or uniques to get there. But what happens if you don't do that in baseball, because it's incremental projections here, because we're trying to find a medium, or a median outcome, it's going to focus on those people that may have, or those players that may have a 1-point advantage over everybody else. And all of a sudden you get 40% of them. I don't want that in baseball. How do you handle getting a diverse spread amongst your player pool?
Yeah, I know Alex talks about this a lot, but I really do add the randomness up quite a bit. And then I'll do with my player cap. So like last night, for like pitchers, I don't leave all the pitchers available. I'll try to at least like X out a lot of the guys and go with the tight pool there, but I will cap it because I don't want to end up with I loved Rodon last night, but I want to have 70% of him. So I want to make it spread, especially on FanDuel. I mean, you can really spread out your pitchers more so on DraftKings, where you're going to see a lot of guys get a ton of ownership over there. But for me personally, I just kind of add up the randomness. I'm a little bit different with pitchers. I think they're a little bit more predictable. So lessen the randomness over there. But on the bats, I'm not afraid to go 40-60% and just playing around with my exposure stacks. But I never want to be too heavy on a guy because it's not like NBA where the 30-minute 3K guy is just a lock play where you can lock him. Like Mike Trout in the smash spot, he can very easily go 0-for-4. So like you, I try to limit my exposures on individual bats as well.
All right, so moving on to our other games here. And don't worry, throughout the seasons, as we are not up against an early NBA playoff slate, et cetera, we'll have more time to talk about the different strategies, et cetera, here. But those are just some quick notes to get in for those that are dipping their toe back into the MLB world and remembering, what the heck did I do 7 months ago, the last time I played MLB? We'll help you guys dust that stuff off. The last two games here of our early slate, we've got the Detroit Tigers at Kansas City Royals. You've got Matt Manning taking on Chris Bubik. Both of these guys definitely have gas can tendencies here. There's a lot of power in the Detroit lineup. There's a lot of strikeouts in the Detroit lineup, and there's not a lot of name brands. Well, there are name brands, but they're kind of getting old and on the downward portion of their career, or they're incredibly volatile, like Javi Baez or Jonathan Scope. On the other side, you've got the Royals. Somehow, Adalberto Mondesi has found himself on base a few times already. I think he's got 3 or 4 stolen bases, but you can't steal first. What are you doing with this one, Chris?
Yeah, so the pitchers are interesting because Matt Manning is a guy that just does not strike anybody out. Looking at his numbers dating back to last year, we're talking a 5.06 xFIP, 5.2. I know he's a young guy and there's could have a bright future, but a 14.6% carry is just not going to get the job done for me for DFS purposes. In this KC lineup, I wouldn't mind getting to some stacks here. It's only like a 4.1 implied team total for the Kansas City Royals, so it's not like it's anything too spectacular here. Manning to go 70 pitches in his first start, but for DFS purposes, he's just not someone I can really get to. Bubik, I think, is kind of interesting here at $6,200, 3.8 implied team total against him versus Detroit. Got destroyed in his first start versus the Guardians. I don't believe he made it out of the first inning. Only had 29 pitches, gave up 5 runs, good for -11 fantasy points. I think it'll go a little bit better this time. And at his price point, I think it's fine. Like, Detroit's not the pushover matchup that it has been in the past. They definitely have some nice added additions this season, but at $6,200, I definitely think he's worth it if you're trying to get some expensive stacks, maybe like Toronto on the slate.
Was muting there. Sorry. Just wanted to test Tyler, see how he's doing. He's looking good here. Got a nice little Richard Petty mustache going on in honor of NASCAR today. He's got the hanging the dip, of course, because he is in Texas, and that is what they call breakfast. So back to this here, I see, hey, Kickstart, let me know that's not how we say Bubik. But if I can just say boobs, doesn't that get our viewership up in 99% male-dominated market here? I believe it's Bubich or Bubik, but I don't know for sure. But all I can think about is, well, the first portion of that. Our final game of the early slate here, Sonny Gray going against Tanner Howe. You've got the Boston Red Sox looking loaded here. Embarrassment of riches. Trevor Story batting 6th or 7th today. Most likely you've got Bobby Dahlbeck in there. Sonny Gray, someone who's interesting. It gets a little tougher to go to him on DraftKings at 9,700 in this matchup with Boston looking at a 5.2 implied run total. One thing I did want to call out here, the thing I've been doing, and this is something I've done the last several years, both at the beginning of the season and then towards the end of the season, I will cap my DraftKings pitchers. I try to go 5 to 7% below the popular ones and 5 to 7% above the less popular ones to get in a different mix. With so many of our pitchers having the abbreviated spring training and this also being early in the year, everybody sort of is in that implied 80-ish pitch range. We'll know who the folks are that are going to be getting up to 100 pretty quick. But that at this point, it's a lot of fresh arms in the bullpen. Managers are going to be quick to pull their starters if they're in trouble. It's a long season. So what I'm looking to do there is just embrace the variance for part of this. You get some lucky outings where you get some, random pitcher unexpectedly getting a relatively clean 4 innings with 7 strikeouts. And then you see some stalwart aces get their ass kicked early on. It's just the way baseball goes. But that is one thing I look at. So I will have a little bit of both these guys, probably around 10 or 15%, because you got to play 2 pitchers on DraftKings. Would you look at either one of these guys on a single pitcher site? And what do you like from the rest of our final early game?
Yeah, I certainly would. Both present some strikeout upside. I mean, for Sonny Gray last year, we're talking above 26%. And then for Tanner Houck, he was sitting at nearly 30% last year with a really nice 3.36 xFIP and a 3.41 CR. Maybe a little bit surprising of how good he was, but I can certainly get behind it. The one thing I will say for the Minnesota bats is that this is a extremely cheap stack over on DraftKings. We're talking $2,300 for the leadoff hitter. We have Polanco at $3,400. Carlos Correa's below $4K. Kepler's at $2,700 batting cleanup. Trevor Larnach batting 5th. It's $2K. Like, the rest of the guys in the bottom half of the order are not above $2,400. So if you're looking for a cheap stack today to get some expensive pitching and maybe get the Blue Jays in because they're expensive, the Twins are presenting a ton of value in a very hitter-friendly park in Boston today, even though the matchup for the pitcher is not that great.
We do have me on mute again. We have the weather looking like it's going to be in the low 60s towards the middle portion of the game. We also have a 10 to 12 mile an hour breeze going out to straight center field. That is something that's helpful. Of course, Brandon Buxton is, I think he's getting an MRI, hurt himself sliding into second base on a fly ball the other day, or what I didn't see the play. I always tell my wife, when you watch the fielders kind of run together and they all kind of look at each other and they misplay the ball, the old thing to call that is the husband and wife play, zero communication. So I've told that to my wife. So every time she's watching games with me, she sees that, she goes, "Oh, the old husband and wife play." There was a misplayed fly ball that he thought they were going to do something different with it, and he ended up having to slide into second. So he unfortunately hurt himself. Perpetually hurts himself, but that's why you're seeing a somewhat watered down lineup here from Minnesota, but a lot of opportunities with those discounted hitters there. So let's move on to that next slate. This is the 3-game 6 o'clock slate. If you are playing the all-day contest, of course, this will be feathered in there. But let's turn to the Giants here. They are in Cleveland going against the Guardians. We have a game that is going to be in the upper 40s to low 50s, a little bit chilly there. There's going to be a cross breeze from third base to first base in the 8 to 12 mile an hour range. Not particularly pleasant. You've got Anthony DeSclafani going against the Guardians here. DeSclafani has sort of normalized his splits against batters. Used to be someone that you could always target with lefties. He's sort of addressed that issue, but got gobsmacked in his last start. So we'll have to hear what Chris has to say about that. On the other side, you have Cal Quantrill going against the Giants. The Giants have an okay lineup. They're a bunch of no-name type players, but they have a fair amount of power, and people tend to overlook them. You've got Yastrzemski, Belt, Jock Peterson playing a prominent role these days, particularly against righties, and then the ageless wonder, Brandon Crawford. So they're loaded with lefties there at the top of the order. That could be a little bit of trouble there for Quantrill. What do you like in our first game of our evening slate?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's not a lot of options on this turbo evening slate, whatever you want to call it, but I mean, both these pitchers in this game are pretty unappealing. Both went around 75 pitches in their first start, so we should get 80 plus. But, and like you said, pretty favorable weather for pitching at below 50s. Looks like we have some wind blowing in around 12 miles per hour. I mean, for me, if I had to pick an offense in this game, it's going to be the Cleveland Guardians, and I'm not being biased as a Cleveland fan here, but they have been hitting the ball very well to start the season. Stephen Kwan has turned into one of the best players in baseball for the first week. That's obviously not going to continue. And I feel like I think they have around 4 players that are top 5 in total hits so far this year. So they've been swinging some hot bats. Yes, they've had some pretty easy matchups. They faced KC. They had a tough matchup last night, and they didn't really do much. Anthony DeSclafani, I wouldn't say is the toughest matchup out there. He's a decent real-life pitcher, but for me, if I had to get to a team, the Guardians are the one I'd full stack, but I think some of these lefties on the San Francisco Giants are somewhat viable versus Cal Quantrill.
All righty. The next game, we've got 31 minutes to go. Don't worry, we'll spend plenty of time on the main slate here. You'll also get an MLB Live Before Lock show later today. You're going to get right after us the NBA Live Before Lock show. That's covering the 4-game NBA slate. We have a staggered slate today with the first round of the playoffs. First game tipping off at 1 o'clock Eastern. There will also be a second Live Before Lock for NBA covering the 2-game slate, the latter portion of today's NBA action as we continue to, or as we make the debut of the real postseason, the actual playoffs, now that we've gotten out of the play-in tournament. Pair of lefties going here with the Phillies taking on Miami there. You've got Ranger Suarez. Marginal strikeouts upside does tend to limit power more often than not, but he's perfectly average pitcher. You have Trevor Rogers, another talented lefty, doesn't quite get the strikeouts where we want them to be, but seems like yet another youngster coming off the assembly line of pitchers that the Marlins will at some point trade to another team. We'll have to see what happens there. Reminder that there is the universal DH across the land. So that means our favorite time to stack or go with Marlins pitching or with the Giants pitching, et cetera, when they're at home. That is no more. We have the full DH going forward. We also have humidifiers now in all MLB venues. What that does is they're trying to just kind of neutralize everything. So if you're in a park like potentially Miami or Seattle, et cetera, where it tends to be more humid, they're looking to sort of dry out the baseball a little bit. On the flip side, we all know Chase Field and Coors Field, they're looking to make the ball a little heavier so it doesn't fly quite as far. So this is something that I think will not be dramatic changes for a lot of venues, but these are each little incremental things that tick against the pitching in some of those our favorite pitching venues. What do you like here in the second of our 3-game abbreviated slate?
So I think both these pitchers do look decent just for today's slate. It's a small slate, so I'm not like in love with any of these pitchers in the turbo slate, but they're both fine. Ranger Suarez, while he's not like an elite level pitcher, he was pretty decent last year, did flash some strikeout upside in certain matchups, and he did fare well versus Miami last season. Hate to use history versus the team, but so early in the season, it's something I guess I can at least point to. They did have Jorge Soler here, some pop at the top of the order from Miami, but I think both pitchers are fine. I know the Phillies have a loaded lineup, and guys like JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Rhys Hoskins, Gene Segura, a lot of good righties in this lineup that could give Trevor Rogers some fits, but both these guys, I think, have enough upside. Rogers is a bit expensive. I believe he's above $9,000 over on the DK slate. But with the lack of options, and if we look at the pitchers in the next game, it's nothing you're really going to get too excited about. So I think a lot of people are going to land on these two guys if they're playing cash games or single entry, or just really majority of all your lineups, you're playing 150 max contests. So for me, it's a pitcher heavy game, not really too excited about either bets.
And that makes a fair amount of sense here, especially on the two pitcher sites. We're going to have to work in some of these players. Key thing I always like to point out is it's okay to play a hitter or two against your pitchers. While it is not completely optimal, particularly at this point of the season, you're going to be getting about half their at-bats against the bullpen. So while those could be fresher arms, it's not your pitcher. As long as your pitcher gets in, 3, 4, 5 relatively clean innings, puts in a couple strikeouts, and then your guy hits a home run against the bullpen or even gets the home run against your pitcher, and that's the only run they give up, it's perfectly fine. A lot of gamers are afraid to go that route. I don't think that's an issue anymore, particularly as teams lean more and more towards waiting for those home runs or trying to put their players in a position to go for the home runs. We've seen stolen bases on a dramatic decline. We've seen walks, surprisingly, on a decline. Nobody's afraid to strike out anymore. Baseball has changed dramatically over the last few seasons on this one. So I'm handing this over to you, Chris, while my dog goes crazy.
All right, so we can start with the next game. We have the Washington Nationals. We have Josh Rogers on the mound, and we have the Pittsburgh Pirates with Bryce Wilson on the mound. I think this is our best game to go for bats. And looking at the Awesemo top stacks tool, Washington has the extremely best chance to be the top stacks. They're going to be quite popular. Juan Soto is by far the best play in the slate, $5,900. He is quite expensive, but I think you can find enough value to make that work. Bryce Wilson is a guy dating back to last season, about 70 innings, 14% K rate. Doesn't really walk too many guys, so he's going to give you pitches to hit and give up over a 200 ISO. So Juan Soto, by far, just top play for me across the board. And overall, the stack is not hard to get to outside of Soto. You have Cesar Hernandez leading off at $3,200. Nelson Cruz at $3,900. It's incredibly too cheap. I know we prefer him versus lefties, but I love that price point. Josh Bell has plenty of pop versus right-handed pitching. Bottom half of the order isn't too pretty, but that top half does look pretty good today.
All right, that was just Mama Mac coming on out of the master bedroom. My dog, of course, had to greet her quite loudly. Those are the rules when you have dogs, right? When they get excited to see someone, they're going to have to let everybody know. So thank you there for that. The Hounds of Hell, I see is what Scott has put in chat. Yes, she's about 15 pounds. I call it 15 pounds of fury. Very stubborn dog, but a lot of fun as well. Really only barks when she needs to get someone's attention, which means come rub my tummy. So there we go. That's a day in the life of my dog. Moving on here to the main slate, we've got about 25 minutes left. Reminder, we are brought to you by PrizePicks. We will talk about them. We'll throw out a couple picks for you as well today. The key thing that you want to know is you use the promo code Awesemo. You'll get a deposit match up to $100 with your first deposit. That will also get you 1 full month of Awesemo premium access for free. That's $190 value just for using the promo code Awesemo. The other thing that they're doing today is they have put a very winnable player prop up for baseball or for basketball. Joel Embiid to score at least half a point today. So they had an issue with their app last week, so they wanted everybody to have a little bit of fun. So they are giving the kind of that freebie player prop there. That's like having one automatic yes, as long as Embiid scores a point. You can use up to $20 or $25 for that. You can split that out and, $4 or $5 entries or one $20 entry. If you try to do a larger entry, it will tell you you can't use that bet for that particular entry, but it's a lot of fun over there. We'll talk about them in just a moment. Moving on to our main slate here. We have, of course, the New York Yankees going into Baltimore. We have a revamped Camden Yards. They have pushed back some of the outfield fences. They have raised the outfield fences somewhat in the hopes, I guess, to make it less offensive friendly here. I don't know. I always enjoyed the offensive action there in Camden Yards, especially since I'm in their viewing area. You got to like the batters of Birdland. It makes things interesting when they can hit home runs. Jameson Taillon looks like a standout play on DraftKings at $7,000. You have Tyler Wells on the other side, $5,600. Feather him into a few lineups. Because we just have 6 games on our main slate on the 2 pitcher sites. We're going to need a little bit of differentiation. There are a lot of strikeouts in the Yankees lineup. However, there is a boatload of power. Talk a little bit about Taillon here going against a mediocre at best group of hitters.
Yeah, he's looking like he's going to be the popular SP2 on the main slate tonight. I don't think a lot of people are going to get up to Verlander, and we'll talk about him in a little bit as the SP1, but you're looking for an SP2, you're looking to get some Coors bats, you're looking to get some more expensive bats, maybe like the Los Angeles Dodgers. I believe they are on the slate. So many slates to talk about. I'm trying to remember who's on each slate here. But yeah, I can definitely get behind Taillon. Montgomery last night had a decent game, didn't really get any strikeouts, but the Baltimore Orioles lineup is not something we should really fear. And I prefer using righties versus them compared to lefties that did actually have a decent amount of pop and didn't really strike out too much versus left-handed pitching last year. So getting a righty on the mound profiles pretty well for me. I love this price point, only $7,000, $8,600 over on FanDuel. And Juan Taillon's not the best pitcher out there. 4.61 xFIP, 23% K rate. Not an elite guy or anything to give some pop last year, but we're mainly just picking on the matchup, and this price point's a little bit too low.
All right. If producer Tyler wants to put me back on the screen, they were saying the dog looks like she's 70 pounds. No, little dog here. She just gets excited, wants to let everybody know what's going on. I definitely think that the Yankees are going to be both popular as one of our top stacks, as well as Taillon being one of our key pitchers. We move along to our next game here. We've got the game in Texas. We don't know yet or I haven't looked yet to see if the roof will be open. Reminder, they do try to open the roof there at Arlington, which makes it more hitting friendly. We know that is now a pitcher's park. They're no longer at the old outdoor ballpark in Arlington, but you've got Noah Syndergaard here. Can he regain any of the Thor form? You've got Taylor Hearn here. Always scary with the lefty going against Anaheim, particularly when they are fully healthy. They, of course, have Trout and Anthony Rendon back this season. That makes them a very tough lineup. Joe Adell, while he's not making a lot of contact, he is hitting the ball very, very far when he does. He's an interesting option. If you've got Max Stassi behind the plate, he is perfectly fine to get rid of that pesky catcher requirement. What do you like here from our second game here? Lead us off with a little bit of a Syndergaard thought.
Yeah, so Syndergaard's interesting. He hasn't pitched much, obviously, in the past couple of years. He did go 76 pitches in his first start, and he actually had a solid game versus Houston. That's a very tough matchup. So I think him having a solid game there at least gives me some hope. The one thing I will say is that, back in the day, he had around 100-mile-per-hour fastball. He was sitting around 95 in his first start. So he's not going to be able to overpower guys like he used to be. I mean, it's still decent 95 miles per hour, but he's going to have to be a little bit more finesseful. Is that a word with his pitches? So, but I still think he's got the upside for it. Now, the Rangers lineup is definitely a lot better than it was last year. I mean, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien now, and they've been hitting pretty well. I've been stacking the Rangers early in the season, and it hasn't been going too bad. And while Syndergaard doesn't have some good name value, and he's $7,100, which is pretty appealing over on DK, and they have a low implied team total, don't be afraid to get some Ranger stacks in versus Syndergaard, a guy who's been pretty injury ridden for the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, and the Rangers lineup completely turned over. Brad Miller, Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Mitch Garver, the entire top half of their lineup wasn't on the team last year. Of course, they have brought in Cole Calhoun to team him up with Willie Calhoun, no relation. But they've definitely shaken things up a little bit there in Texas. Not the watered down lineup filled with strikeouts like we're used to seeing the last couple of years. I do think that you're on to something here. DraftKings agrees with you, at least the salary algorithm does. 4,500 for Semien, 5,000 for Seager, 4,000 for Garver, at least while he's healthy. This does make for an intriguing stack here. I like that we have some price point differentials here that makes it a little more of a thought process for us. Moving on to game number 3 here, we've got the Cardinals going against the Brewers here. Let me get my notes back up. This one is Steven Matz going against Adrian Hauser. Matz, he's a terrifying pitcher to look to. He can get rocked, absolutely rocked by right-handed power, and that is something that Milwaukee has in just in abundance of. They've got Andrew McCutchen. He will probably be batting lead up. He'll be in the top 4 of the order. He's been batting lead up a little bit for them. They've got Willie Adames, who's got plenty of holes in his swing, but when he connects, the ball goes far. Same thing can be said about Hunter Renfroe and Keston Hiura. Dangerous lineup here. High salary for Matz at 9,000 on DraftKings. Hauser on the other side, 8,600, but we have the forever professional lineup of the St. Louis Cardinals. And it looks like the Redbirds insist that they only need 2 switch hitters and no left-handed batters. Oh, wait, there's Corey Dickerson. I wondered where he's still in the league. Yeah, they're going against a heavy righty lineup here. That brings Hauser in play. Can you decipher anything for us for these pitchers? Because we only have 12 of them on this main slate tonight.
Yeah, for me, Matz is too expensive. He struggled in his first start. I believe he was a lot cheaper versus Pittsburgh. Ended up giving up a grand slam. Gave up 7 runs, just got absolutely killed. It was on a great day, and this is a bit of a tougher spot here versus the Milwaukee Brewers, as you just mentioned. They have a ton of righty power, which is something Matz has always struggled with. McCutchen, Adames, Hunter Renfroe, Hiura, Tyrone Taylor, Mike Brosseau. I mean, it's just a pretty good lineup as far as profiling well versus lefties. And as far as the Cardinals go, I think Hauser is interesting because he's always been a guy that has some pretty big splits when it comes to righties and lefties. And as of right now, looks like Tommy Edman, Corey Dickerson are going to be, and Dylan Carlson at the top of the order might be the only lefties that he's going to see. So at that point, it's like, I'll have a little bit of interest in Hauser. The only thing is the Cardinals are a team, while they're a lot better versus lefties, they have some really, really good splits versus left-handed pitching, some of the best in the entire league. And they're not as good versus righties, but they still don't really strike out that much either. I don't think Adrian Hauser is going to be a guy that just mows down this lineup. So from a run prevention standpoint, he might be okay, but for DFS purposes, I'm not sure the ceiling is going to be too high.
And that, I think, makes a lot of sense here. Again, this is the mixing and matching aspect that we sort of hit on with that 3-game evening slate or late afternoon slate, depending on which coast you're on. This is baseball. Weird things are going to happen this early in the season. You're just hoping for a handful of clean innings. Anything beyond that is gravy, as long as your pitchers don't get negative points on a slate like this, where we're looking at some very dicey options. That is going to be the way to go, because it doesn't get much prettier in our next couple of games. We've got a Coors Field extravaganza here. It's going to be in the mid 60s. You got a nice 6 to 10 mile an hour breeze going out to right field. Couple of righties on the mound tonight. You've got Mark Leiter Jr., who is back in our lives. I think he pitched a couple years ago, going from memory here, not to be confused with his dad, Mark, or his uncle, Al. But this is a tough matchup going against Colorado. This will be his opening matchup of the season. On the other side, you have Antonio Senzatella. Senzatella tries to be a ground ball pitcher, but he can give up some big innings here. This feels like a spot. I don't want to X out pitchers per se, but I would say these guys are going to be 5% of my lineups maximum. But the $4,000 for Leiter does have him in play, even if we only get 40 or 50 pitches from him. What do you want to do with the gas cans? And then lead us through the bats.
Yeah, if you want to find some bright spots for Leiter, he did throw 9.2 innings in the spring, did have 10 strikeouts, only gave up 3 runs. Last year, looking at the AA and AAA numbers, I believe with Detroit, 25 innings from AA, 31.5% K rate, 89 innings in AAA, 30.5% K rate with a 3.5 xFIP. So it's not like he was terrible or anything. He actually did show some upside. But the thing is, we're in Coors Field, and the big leagues are a lot different than the minor leagues. So if there was any game to just X out the pitchers, this is definitely looking like a good one. Now, are these guys going to be super low owned and it's baseball? Anything can happen? Sure, but we're talking a 5.8 implied team total for the Chicago Cubs here and a 6.5 implied team total for the Colorado Rockies. Sensatella is not a guy that strikes out anybody. Like you say, he tries to get ground balls, but he's just not a very good pitcher. He's going to give you pitches to hit. In his first start, he went 66 pitches. He only allowed 1 run, which was fine, but he gave up 9 hits and 0 strikeouts versus the Dodgers, and that's just kind of typical Antonio Sensatella. So I don't mind loading up on all the bats on either side. Just got to know that they're going to be very high owned. So if you are stacking one of these Coors games, or Coors teams, I should say, try to find either a lower owned stack to pair with them or try to get different with your pitchers.
All right, sorry, too many windows open there. Couldn't get back to the unmute button. So yes, obviously tonight this will be a very popular stack and a way to go. But remember, there are many ways to differentiate your lineups within a offensive game like this. The other thing that you don't always need to do is force in batters from these games. While this does look like a really good spot against 2 less than stellar pitchers, that doesn't mean there's going to be a lot of home runs. Doesn't mean there's going to be a lot of extra base hits. And even if there are a lot of runs scored, as we saw last night, I can't remember if it was the Mariners or it was a different team. Somebody had like 9 runs when I finally went to bed, and they had 3 extra base hits, no home runs. So even when, and it's usually, it's the catcher batting 9th, or somebody came in and pinch hit and picked up a couple of the RBIs. Even when you see a lot of crooked numbers out there and you're kicking yourself, said, I know I should have stacked those folks. Go look and see what happened in the box score. Would it have been players that you would have stacked? Oftentimes you're going to see, yep, we did target the right pitcher, but it wasn't the players we expected that ended up with the production. So always important to remember as we embark on yet another MLB season, another 195 days of MLB regular season action ahead of us. Woohoo, I can't wait. Can you? 2 more games here, and we'll hit on PrizePicks, and then we'll get out of the way for the NBA Live Before Lock early show. They are also going to give you a bonus half hour talking about the sponsor of that show, so that will be something to tune into. One of our better pitchers on this slate, the ageless wonder, Justin Verlander, going against the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners have Chris Flexen. Somehow the DraftKings algorithm believes in Chris Flexen. $9,300. That is a bit of a shock. Flexen, someone who basically pitched himself out of the league a couple years ago, reinvented himself in the Korean League, came back, got a chance with the Mariners, who were desperate for pitching, and survived all season for him. We were looking to pick against him for a long time. Doesn't get many strikeouts, but also doesn't allow a lot of power. However, 9,300, that feels like lighting money on fire going against the Astros here. Verlander on the other side, out with injuries for quite some time here. Did he find the fountain of youth for a 3rd time, Chris? What are you looking at here from Verlander?
I'm hoping so. I mean, he had a good opening start. He's going to be my highest owned pitcher on the main slate tonight. There's just no way around that. I mean, the pitching options, while there's a couple of decent guys, $9,700 isn't really breaking the bank for Justin Verlander. And if you pair him up with a cheaper SP2, you can pretty much do whatever you want with your stacks. But he went 80 pitches in his first start and forever, had 20 points, 7 strikeouts versus the Angels, which is a pretty tough matchup. I'd say this is an easier spot here versus Seattle. And Seattle definitely has some strikeout upside in this matchup. The top half of the order doesn't really strike out too much. Adam Frazier, only an 8% strikeout rate versus righties. Ty France, 16%. Jesse Winker, 12%. We know he crushes right-handed pitching, but after that, Haniger is above 25%. You have Suarez above 28%, Kalenic at 29%. Julio Rodriguez, very small sample size, 19 plate appearances, but he's striking out at 58% of the time versus righties right now. And bottom of the order, 37% K rate. So Verlander, we know is a guy, last time he pitched a full season was sitting around 35% K rate. Not sure it's going to be quite that these days, but he did have 7 strikeouts versus the Angels. And I wouldn't say it's a stretch to say he can get 7K plus again.
Tyler, come on. I'm going to stop muting myself.
Emac, you're freaking me out. Every time I freak out, I'm like, oh no, did Emac freeze? Did he tab out? What happened?
No. We're still here, much to the chagrin of about 15 members watching in YouTube. For those of you that love me and really love Chris and his analysis here, he's a multi-sport threat coming into his own here at Awesemo. Hit that like button. For those of you not a fan, go ahead and hit that dislike button. It's all about the engagements. But for those of you that really don't like me, hit that dislike button twice. That'll just really show your anger towards the powers that be. That is bringing us to our next pitcher, Julio Urias, 9,900 on DK. Not the easiest of matchups against the Reds. They're not great. They're not horrible. They have wind farms such as Tommy Pham, Aristides Aquino, but then they have players that are selective at the plate. Urias was horrible in his last start. Velocity was not there, which is a bit of an issue when you are, someone that throws in the 94 to 95 mile an hour range with regularity. He was barely hitting 90. Hopefully this is just early season stuff, shakes this off and ends up being another solid pitcher here. But does that dampen your expectations of him tonight, what we saw in his first start, or you giving him a mulligan on that?
I think we can give him a little bit of a break that he was pitching in Coors Field, but outside of that, still with velocity down, that's something that's certainly going to be concerning. I definitely prefer Verlander. He's $200 cheaper. I just don't see why I'd go to him. Obviously, on FanDuel, it's a different story where Verlander's 10.5 and he's 9.8. But for me personally, I'm not going to get to a ton of him just because of the price discrepancy on him and Verlander. I'd much rather get to him. I feel a lot better with that. But the upsides, I mean, if you're looking at last season's number, you had a really sparkling 307 ERA, but the expectancy are a total different story. That was closer to 4. Still a solid 25% K pitcher. Didn't really walk too many guys. I think he's fine. The matchup versus Cincy isn't amazing. They did lose a couple bats, but even then, it's not losing Jesse Winker is not huge because it was a lefty on lefty matchup. Suarez was a free strikeout. It felt like every single time, but not in love with the spot. I'd prefer getting to the Dodgers bats other than the pitcher here.
The Dodgers, boy, veritable all-star game here. Only can the Dodgers have a National League MVP batting 8th, 9th, or even benched quite often. That would be Cody Bellinger, down to 2,900 on DraftKings. I think that's a fair price. Seems to be completely lost at the plate these days. That is a disappointment because he was a phenomenal player at the apex of his powers. Some people are saying sign stealing potentially as correlated with the crackdown on that with his ability to hit the baseball. I don't think it's that, but who knows anymore. But Freddie Freeman, wow, that's an amazing snag for the Dodgers. Trey Turner, of course. You've got Max Muncy, Justin Turner, literally an all-star game. Pretty much everybody's been an all-star or a rookie of the year or something, except Gavin Lux. But he's been forever a talent that just never seems to break through. I think the Dodgers are going to be the best stack to counteract the Coors Field crowd. Do you have any insight on Hunter Green here other than he's going against one of the most difficult offenses in the league to face?
Yeah, he's definitely not going to pick up a ton of ownership just because he's going to be against the Dodgers. And I don't care what kind of pitcher you are. I don't care if you're Verlander. I don't care if you're Jacob deGrom. Going up against the Dodgers is not going to be an easy task. But if you are trying to get weird on this slate, Hunter Green is a somewhat interesting option. We know there's plenty of upside here. He's got a heater. He can hit triple digits. The guy is a young guy, so obviously there's a lot of hit or miss that can happen, especially early in the season. But they go 92 pitches in his first start, strike out 7 versus Atlanta. It was a pretty overall solid day. And with the Dodgers having a team total in the low 5s, I think that's maybe just a little bit of respect for Green because I think the Dodgers will be higher than that most days this year. But at $7,500, Taillon's going to be the mega chalk as your SP2. If you have a chalky core stack, maybe moving to Hunter Green as your SP2 instead of Taillon might be a decent way to get different.
All right, that runs us through the slate. I wanted to give Tyler one last heart attack there. No, actually I didn't. I had not muted myself, and then I muted myself before talking because nothing says professional like me on lack of caffeine. So we've got 4 minutes left here. I want to talk about PrizePicks real quick here. We, of course, have the free NBA PrizePicks projections for you. That's available at Awesemo.com. Go over to the NBA header, slide down to projections, and then from there you'll see towards the bottom the PrizePicks NBA projections. You can get those. Tell you what, here's a near lock. All you need is Joel Embiid to score 1 point, and you will win that PrizePicks bet. What is PrizePicks? Well, they are player props. You build out cards 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you choose from multiple sports across multiple different statistical categories. What makes them different from a sports wagering site? Well, they have fantasy points. So that is something that is not available on most of the other sports books or any that I'm aware of. So that is something that's a lot of fun. Today, they are doing that special promotion where you can use Joel Embiid up to $20 or $25 worth of player cards to get that half point or more. That is a gimme on that one. They have the essentially, if you pick 4, and you choose the winner take all version of that, you will get 10x your value. If you have a 5-player card and you get all 5 right, you get 10x. You get 4 right, you get 2x. You get 3 right, you get 40% of your money back. A little bit different than the rest of the player prop market in that you don't have to be perfect if you are choosing those flex options. And then finally, if you have a tie, or if you have a player that does not set foot on the court, the field, etc., that is just removed from your player card. So if you had a 2-player card prop question, you're done. You get your money back. If you have a 3, it turns into a 2. If you have a 5, it turns into a 4. A lot of the other sports books, they would just void your entire card at that point. PrizePicks doesn't want you to have a poor user experience, so they hook you up with that little twist there. So use the promo code Awesemo. That will get you up to a $100 deposit match, as well as get you 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Looking at it quickly at 2 of their baseball props here. Corey Kluber, 5 strikeouts, over or under. I would like to take the under. He's going against the White Sox. I'm tabbing him for about 75 to 80 pitches. Feels like he's going to need luck on his side to get 5 or more strikeouts. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I have him right around 5. If you look at the DK Sportsbook, they got a -130 to get over 4.5. I mean, 5's kind of the number that's pushing it for me. If he was at 4.5 on PrizePicks, I'd be interested, but 5, I think, is the number he's probably going to land on, which I don't want to push.
Yes, which is why I explained those push rules that exist. It doesn't destroy your wager. It actually gives you kind of a little bit of an out depending on how you construct the remainder of your card. The other guy I'd be okay going on the under is 4.5 strikeouts, Nick Martinez. Do you have a read on that one as Martinez takes on the Atlanta Braves?
Yeah, I could certainly get behind the under. He's sitting at 4.5, I believe you said.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that the Braves will strike out a little bit versus right-handed pitching, but Nick Martinez is not a guy that really profiles to be too strikeout heavy. And if the Braves can get to him early and knock him out, I think that's fine. For him to get 4.5 strikeouts, he's probably going to have to push for 5-6 innings, which I'd take my chances on the Braves there.
All right. And then two quick questions for you. Where do you have Verlander coming out in your model? PrizePicks has him at 6.5. I feel that's appropriate. But is he going to see enough Mariner batters to get to 6.5?
80 pitches in his first start was encouraging for me. Right now, I have him sitting just around like 7 to the 7.5 range. So at 6.5, I am willing to take the over. Although so early in the season, I try to go with these pitcher props or strikeout props that are a lot lower on guys because I just feel more comfortable with that. Because when you're starting to talk like 6, 7 plus, so early in the season, some of these guys will get yanked early. It does give me some concern. But Verlander's a guy where if you had to force me to pick, I would take the over on 6.5.
All right. With that, we're going to scoot on out of here because we have the NBA Live Before Lock coming up right after us. Different stream, same channel. Please do hit that like button. Hey, subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can find out whenever we go live. So pleasure doing the first show with you, Chris, here. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully you'll be tabbed with the lucky early Saturday morning slate, the coveted early morning slate here at Awesemo. You can follow Chris over on Twitter at Chris Pennell, there's 2 L's, 16. You can find me at EMAC DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.